live storytelling before, so let's give an encouraging welcome to Rina.
Thank you, Chaz, for asking me to participate tonight. It's an honor to be here amongst all you people, and I just want to say that it is quite something to join an organization and not know anybody, and then come to the convention, and then on the first night appear on stage in front of everyone. But I needed to tell my dad's story. In 1 week, it'll be 3 years since he died, and when Chaz first asked me if I would do this tonight, this is the story that presented itself. So then, when he told me that borderline was the theme, I knew I had to tell it. So it was my therapist who told me that I had gypsy blood. She said because I had lived in so many countries before the age of 5, that unlike most people, I was not afraid of change. In fact, I craved it. So at this point in my life, I had about a dozen jobs, and I lived in about as many places, and I was in my 20s, my early 20s. So I knew, but now I knew why. My dad was born in the former Soviet Union, and I know that some of you guys are too young to remember what the Soviet Union is, so come find me afterwards. And I'll tell you because I only have 7 minutes left. So he was born in the Ukraine Soviet Socialist Republic to a family of Jews. And he was born into a country that hated Jews. So he didn't really tell me the details of what happened, but he did tell me that when it was time for him to graduate high school, the principal called him into the office and told him that even though he had earned it, he was not going to be getting the award of valedictorian that year because his older sister and brother had already earned it and he wasn't giving it to another Jew. And that's what they did back then. They limited the number of Jews who could go to university or get a good job or live in a nice apartment. So my dad went to college and he graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering, and he got a job in the port city of Tallinn, Estonia, which was also part of the Soviet Union. And that's where he met my mom, and they had me. Now, the funny thing about Tallinn is it's only 90 kilometers from Helsinki, Finland, which means that they get their television signal. So despite the propaganda of the Soviet Union regime of saying how poor everyone is and miserable everyone is in the Western countries, the people who lived in Tallinn knew those were all lies. And also, my dad was sailing on this merchant ship. So he saw firsthand that life could be better and life could be different. Right around the same time, there was this worldwide movement of people trying to save Soviet Jewry. And what happened is my dad went to meet his mom and his brother and his sister, and he told them he was getting out. He said he didn't want to live in a country and raise a daughter that would be hated just for being Jewish. So at that time, Nixon had kind of peer pressured Brezhnev into opening up the borders and letting some of the Jews out. The problem was that in order to get out, to get a visa to leave, you had to have family in Israel who would invite you and sponsor you. Well, the borders had been closed for so long at this point that nobody had anybody, hardly. So that wasn't going to stop my dad. So what he did is he went to the airport. He got in line behind a man who was buying a ticket to Israel. And at this time, KGB was very active. Neighbors didn't know if their neighbor was a secret spy who was waiting for the slightest infraction to turn them in. But that wasn't going to stop my dad. So he tapped on the man's shoulder and he asked him to please help get our family out of the country. Now this man also doesn't know if my dad is a KGB agent who's secretly trying to entrap him, but he too takes the chance. So they went into the bathroom of the airport and they took the upper band of the man's underwear, they cut a little slit in it, and they removed the elastic band. On it, my dad wrote our address. The man composed himself and went off to Israel. Months went by, we knew nothing, no word, nothing happened. But what happened is, our address found its way to a couple in Israel. The man, Abram, had been a Polish Jewish prisoner in the Soviet Union. And the woman, Shura, had been a prison guard. And the way that this prison was sort of structured is he'd be walking around like any normal guy. So she didn't know he was a prisoner until it was too late. She had already fallen in love with him. So when he got out, they moved to Israel. And this was sometime in the 50s. So Abram wrote a letter to our family, and he posed as my dad's uncle and asked us to come and live in Israel with him. So we got out, and the government took everything we had. On the way out, we had one suitcase each and $100. I was 2 years old when we left the Soviet Union. And my mom tells me that Shuda loved me very much. That Abram would come to our house every Friday night and take us to their house for Shabbat dinner, something we weren't allowed to celebrate in the Soviet Union. And Shuda gave me a ring. It was this green, giant, big green ring that I thought was a giant emerald. And I wore this ring every day until the band broke when I was 18. So around my 10-year anniversary, my husband asked me if I wanted a ring for, to commemorate. And the reason he had to ask is because I'm not really a jewelry person, but I figured this ring had started to be on my mind again. So we started shopping for rings. And there was nothing that I wanted to buy, nothing that I wanted to spend that much money on. So my mom somehow found the stone to Shuda's ring that she had given me. And she gave the ring to my husband, and he reset it and gave it to me. And now I wear a piece of my history that I think of my dad and the brave people who helped us escape from the Soviet Union.